report back to you at the 2026 Grand Council Assembly. And the reason we think that this resolution is both timely and important is energy development touches every part of our communities, from how we power our homes and schools, to how we respond to emergencies, to how we protect our lands and waters. It's no longer just a technical issue about, is it the right kilowatt voltage to be transversing through? Will this enable a new subdivision or a new residential development to happen in our communities? We're past that point of dealing with these technical issues one-off. It's now a jurisdictional issue. It's about control, access, opportunity, and asserting our place in a fast-moving sectors that's being redesigned in real time and outside of our influence. Through the steering committee that we're proposing, we're ensuring that leadership has a central role in shaping the future of energy policy across Anishinabek Nation territory. And we're positioning ourselves to not just comment on what's happening, but to build the future ourselves. And that's why we believe this resolution is critically important. Miigwech.
Okay. If we can scroll up to the let it be acted upon. So we do have a mover and a seconder. We have Chief Tanner Simpson from Elderville First Nation, and seconder is Chief Joe Muskokwin. Oh, he's not in the room. Yeah, he just stepped out. So, okay, all right. We'll let them continue on. You have they have other discussion items, so we'll let them continue on, and then we'll bring the resolutions up at the end. Okay, so then we'll move on to the Indigenous Business Advisory Council. Okay, for the Business Advisory Council, the Anishinabek Nation advocates for member First Nations on issues that impact all First Nation people. We're proposing the establishing of a BAC, a Business Advisory Council, one that would act in capacity of advisory, aligning recommendations from the 2008 blueprint that was passed at the Chiefs and Assembly in 2007. And we're implementing recommendations 7, 9, and 10. And this is in relation to improving conditions for First Nation businesses. Through the Chiefs Council on the Economy, this Business Advisory Council really will be set up with regional representatives comprised of retailers, business leaders, with those who have a stake in for-profit for First Nation businesses. It would also look at procurement, trade, resource development, also be look at a central buying entity, also emerging issues impacting business development in communities that require leadership advocacy. So our rationale is to see and foster collaboration between businesses and First Nations among businesses themselves. This is why we're bringing forward the resolution to establish a Business Advisory Council. Was that tourism? Yep. Okay, he's also on the next. He's still there. I'll let you speak to the next one, and then we'll do all three resolutions in a row. How's that? I'll let her speak to the third item, which is a tourism and strategy, and then we'll deal with the three resolutions right after the presentation, okay? And Joe is back. So the third resolution is the regional tourism strategy. In 2022, the Anishinabek Nation passed a tourism-related resolution that focused on developing a dedicated regional tourism strategy, supporting Ondeck Omnikaning's advocacy for Indigenous Tourism Ontario, ITO, and seeking federal and provincial funding to really build ITO's capacity. Currently, the Anishinabek Nation is awaiting funding to launch our phase 1 of a regional tourism strategy that would involve data collection on tourism assets, transportation infrastructure, environmental features, and accommodations and services. These activities will also shape phase 2 on the detailed implementation plan. We're working in strategic partnership with ITO. And currently, ITO's, they're putting forward a proposed regional strategy that covers 22 of our 39 member First Nations, and the remaining 17 will come under our regional tourism strategy. So our rationale for this resolution is to updating the 2022 resolution and now signals momentum and sustained leadership support, ongoing collaboration that aligns with ITO aligns efforts and ensures efficient use of resources. So that's the resolution for tourism. Those are the 3 resolutions. Yeah.
Okay, we're back to the first resolution. And that is the creation of the Chief Steering Committee on Energy and the IMARS opportunity. We have a mover and seconder. The mover is Chief Tanner Simpson from Alderville, and we have seconder Chief Joe Muskogwan from Chippewas of the Thame. Do you want to speak to the item?
So I'm very happy to move this resolution. I know in Alderville, we've been dealing with the energy sector and the issues pretty much since I've been in as chief. We've had negotiations with Hydro One Networks Incorporated. We've been working with the OPG as well as other energy proponents. And we want to make sure that, who's ever negotiating perhaps in the best way forward, that this is shared with all of the First Nations. And the creation of a steering committee is going to lead to that result. So I feel like if we can pool our efforts and pool our best practices and get this into a form of a strategy, then I think that, we're all going to be better off for it, because not every First Nation is going to have the capacity or even the know-how to effectively explore all these options. We know that in Alderville, we're looking at hiring a specialist just for energy. That's how important it is to our First Nation and the future for our own sovereign wealth, our own source revenue. So I know that Chief Joe and we've been speaking a lot about these issues, and he's got a lot of great ideas. So I'm going to leave the floor open for him now.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chairman. Here's an opportunity, this falls so much in line with just what we've been talking about, just the previous, this is an opportunity for us to be involved in a very serious way in the energy development within not only Ontario, but perhaps globally in a lot of ways, and setting up a supply chain for First Nations on how to become involved in that. And it's clear that one of the very primary things that is going to drive this development is going to be the infrastructure and the energy requirements in order to be in the mining business and be in that development sector. And so this is a way here of being involved with an IMARS that would give, some give us a regulatory body in which we structure and put our own laws and our own regulations, just what we got done talking about, in place. Because the problem is, within the bureaucratic infrastructure that's in this country, we have very little influence. Let's be real about it. We have very little influence. If we can establish our own portal into that decision-making process, then we begin to take a seat at the table, not being the spectator in the back. So I'm very much in favor of this. I thank Chief Simpson for moving this. I think it's a very forward-looking resolution that can assist us in the future. It may not have immediate impact, but I'm certain it's going to have futuristic impacts. Miigwech.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll read the resolution. Let it be acted upon that we, the Anishinabek Chiefs in Assembly, one, direct the Anishinabek Nation to support the creation of a Chief Steering Committee on Energy that A, ensures political advocacy in the energy sector reflects the unique needs of each region. B, steers the development of the Anishinabek Nation energy strategy. C, shapes the Indigenous ministerial arrangements, regulations for the Canadian Energy Regulatory Act, and D, explores the creation of an Indigenous governing body to exert jurisdiction over energy infrastructure managed by Canadian energy regulator that cross Anishinabek Nation traditional territories. Two, direct the Anishinabek Nation to continue participation in the Indigenous ministerial arrangements, regulation tables, and to advocate for capacity and funding to do so. And three, direct the Anishinabek Nation to report back to the Chiefs in Assembly at the 2026 Grand Council Assembly. Any questions? Janelle? Sorry, Olga.
First Nation, just some questions that myself and former Chief of Aamjiwnaang and now our Deputy Grand Council Chief, just some questions of clarification. So I'm just going to pass it over to Chief Plain.
Miigwech, Chief. I feel odd coming up to this mic, but anyway, I did point out to my chief because obviously this is a very important issue, very timely opportunity, as you indicated. But you also indicated that the Ontario Energy Board was the one that regulates. But our experiences with both, we have interprovincial pipelines that come from the west. Also, there's former ones that used to come from the east, bringing in the sweet crude and the bitumen from the west. So will this actually then be replacing the NEB? Because that's who are, okay. But you did say the OEB, so we do deal with both in our community, but the tumultuous relationship is with the National Energy Board. So I just wanted to make sure that my community was, aware and, because obviously they have, legal issues and such with multiple agreements, pipeline agreements in the community, transmission agreements as well. So I think it would probably be best if they go back and take some of this information back to make sure it suits them. But I'm not going to speak for our chief, but I just wanted to make sure that that point, because you did mention the OEB, but the issues that my community has faced in the past and likely, in the present and more likely in the future going forward with Bill 5, the predominantly the main issues have been with the National Energy Board and dealing with jurisdiction issues and outdated agreements where they just allow them to continue based on the critical infrastructure and the national security type of thing, and we're just left out to collect 33 cents a day from a pipeline that brings in 1,000 barrels a day, or 1,000 barrels an hour, right? So we get our 33 cents a day, but obviously the NEB has been much to blame for some of the issues that have stalled Aamjiwnaang's progress in the pipeline industry, and also including safety regulations. And I talked, earlier about Bill 5 and the fact that, the regulations that are in place now are a result of non-regulated development. And now we're going backwards. And so, we have pipelines in the community that are not at the regulation depth that they would require because they were built prior to regulations. Now they're just looking for exemptions to be able to, but, those are the types of things that we have to deal with in our community, lack of development because of all the pipelines that are there. there. But to deal with those pipelines when they're expired and such, have been very challenging, to say the least, for a community like Amjadong. And I thank the chief for allowing me to speak because, 19 years of, that experience is still heavily weighed on me. And I left her in a position that, I wasn't there to be able to, share a lot of what, my experience shared. But, obviously I'm only ever a phone call away, but I'm thankful for the chance to be able to address that today for her and for the council members who are here, because it's really important issue for Amjadong. And not that I want to deter away from the resolution, but just to make sure that it's something that might meet the needs of Amjadong. And I'm sure that they'll have consultants that they would probably go back and discuss this with as well. So thank you for clarifying that. Miigwech.
Miigwech, and I just like
Miigwech, Chief, for the time.
sorry, to affirm that the Canadian Energy Regulator has replaced the National Energy Board. So where your past experience with the National Energy Board, I still see your battle scars. This is an opportunity for us to create the regulations that govern the new National Energy Board, to create the regulations and decide where our nations want to exert jurisdiction, whether it's over the permitting process, the construction process, the right to stop to work, the allocation of contracts for completion of work, and the decommissioning of these energy assets. To clarify, the jurisdiction of the Canadian Energy Regulator, the old National Energy Board, is over pipelines and transmission lines across provincial and federal borders. The OEB likes to play a nice little slice the dice, split the hairs thing where they say, oh yeah, well, this is just a domestic little pipeline. It came off this interprovincial pipeline, but we're really just talking about this piece. And in reality, you can't disconnect the tail from the moose and say you're talking about a moose. So we want to have this jurisdiction, this power to do this. I do see that creating a chief's steering committee on energy, and particularly to focus on this IMARS opportunity as an immediate element to work on. If you ever tried to open up a stuck garage door and you can't get the handle to work, the first thing you do is you put a shim under and you start to work it up a little bit. And once we get the door open and are exerting jurisdiction and build that capacity over energy assets, it builds the capacity, the experience, and the political, I don't know the Anishinabek word for oomph, but the political power to shift the conversation to not just those energy assets, but all energy assets within our territories. Miigwech, I just want to clarify.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, we have the mover, we have the seconder. I have read the resolution, and I'll move it to all in favor to the floor. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Not in terms of the actual content. What I want to say is that, in light of the conversation that we had in our previous agenda item, I want to be able to demonstrate or show that, the Anishinabek Nation is sitting in a really unique and really important position, because where our lands are, when you look at the map, the territory, all the way over to the Ottawa River, southwest, north. We're in a position, especially in the southeast region, because we've got our when you look at where the Canadian Parliament sits, it's sitting on Algonquin territory, on unceded land. Those are the decision makers over there that are messing around with the laws right now. And when you look at what the province of Ontario is doing, that's sitting on the Anishinabek land of the First Nations in the southeast region. And also, when you look at who is going to benefit from any of this business development, we're looking at Bay Street. And Bay Street is also sitting right here in the heart of our territory. And I believe that when we're looking at the energy issues and the opportunities behind this resolution, we have been talking, well, I've been observing in the last year is that we're working in areas where policies have already been created. They're already into program stages and we're being directed as the Anishinabek Nation into a bit of program delivery, whereas this is an opportunity to look at our Anishinabek laws, our Anishinaabe laws, and be at the front end of development and the front end of creating these policies that are going to affect development in our territories, and they can be developed based on the principles of our Anishinabek laws. And then I don't know if this is off point or not, but I just wanted to mention about the on the existing pipelines that are going through our territories, because they go through all the territories in the southeast as well. But when you look at the whether there's any influence that we have in terms of these pipelines that were built in the 1950s, perhaps we should be looking at what our brothers and sisters have been going through on the US side, because when it came to Line 3, that was the new Line 3 that came through Minnesota. It started at the headlands of the Mississippi River and down into south of the Duluth area. And the First Nation or the tribes there were very, very active. And they what they were in that developing that new pipeline, the Enbridge is the proponent. We're forced to go outside of the actual reserve boundaries. And when you look at what's happening with Line 5 in Wisconsin, they've got an old pipeline that's going through the reservation there, and they have been very, very clear with the permitting agencies in the US that they have to take that line, that old leaky line out. And they also have to, they opposed building a new line, but the new line is going to go in, but it's going to go around the reserve boundaries. So I believe it would be might be beneficial to touch base with some of those tribes in the US too, to see what their strategy was and how they were able to force Enbridge, which is our Canadian company, to bend to what their demands were. So I just share that might be helpful. Miigwech.
Okay, so we have the mover and seconder. I read the resolution. I'm going to bring it to the floor now for a vote. So all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion is carried. Oh, would you like that noted? Okay, you want to state your name for the record? Okay, miigwech. Okay, we'll move on to we'll bring that resolution up on the screen, establishing an Anishinabek Nation Business Advisory Council. The mover is Chief Joe Muskogman from Chippewas of the Thames, and the seconder is Chief Roger Thomas from Muncie, Delaware Nation. So let it be acted upon that we, the Anishinabek Chiefs and Assembly, supporting the development of a business advisory council within the Anishinabek Nation building framework. 2, direct that the Anishinabek Nation finalize a term of reference within 1 month that aligns with the existing advisory councils and defines the vision and mission of and the stakeholders' roles and responsibilities within the business advisory council. 3, direct that the Anishinabek Nation begin reciting business leaders through the Chiefs Council on the economic and direct outreach from each of the 4 strategic regions. 4, direct the Anishinabek Nation report back to the Chiefs at the 2025 Fall Assembly and each assembly thereafter on the progress of the Business Advisory Council. Did the mover and seconder have any comments?
This resolution came about after engagement with the business communities within our First Nations and their expression of being able to have an input into the development of business opportunities that may be coming down the road, and the type of things that we're dealing with at the political level and at within our communities. So it's really one of more engagement of our own people and becoming for them to have a voice, for them to have a place within the engagement session that we go through. So I think that as we promote and try to develop businesses and partnerships and things of that nature, I think it's important that we hear their voice. Miigwech.
Did the seconder have any comments?
I'm getting the resolution.
Okay. Okay, I'll bring it to a vote. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. That's carried. The third resolution. Is there any online? No. Okay. The third resolution was handed out. So the Anishinabek Nation Regional Tourism Strategy, is that up on the board? We can bring that resolution up on the board. It is moved by Chief Patsy Cobrier, and the seconder is also Chief Roger Thomas. And I know Patsy's online on Zoom, so I'll reach out to her if she has any comments after I read the resolution. So let it be acted upon that we, the Anishinabek Chiefs in Assembly, direct that the Anishinabek Nation advocate on behalf of its members, First Nations, by pursuing federal and provincial funding to build the capacity needed to support the regional tourism strategy. 2, direct that the Anishinabek Nation collaborate with Indigenous Tourism Ontario to develop a regional-based tourism strategy that identifies and promotes the direct and indirect economic activities of First Nation entrepreneurs and small to medium-sized entrepreneurs. 3, direct that the Anishinabek Nation convene a joint meeting with the relevant federal and provincial ministers and agencies, the Chiefs Council on the Economic, the CCOE, and the ITO to discuss key issues, explore opportunities, identify advocacy avenues that promote sustainable economic growth and advance reconciliation efforts within the Anishinabek Nation and Ontario. And 4, direct that the Anishinabek Nation provide a formal progress report on the regional tourism strategy to the Chiefs in Assembly at the 2026 Grand Council Assembly. Does the movers have any comments? How do I bring? Is she got a hand up or anything? Seeing no comments, we'll bring it to a vote. All in favor? Yep, Roger Thomas. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much for your, you have one more. Oh, yes, Ray, you do. Sorry. So the last one is the potential for Chiefs Committee on Capitalization, and that's with Chief Joe Muskoka and also with you, or it's with myself. Okay. And I'll turn the floor over to Darlene again. Thank you.
Miigwech. So right now we're looking, I just want to take a few minutes to speak to the importance of the Chiefs Council on Economy, or CCOE. And we're asking for members to recommit to this important body. We work closely with CCOE members through our Economic Development Department. This was established, created through Resolution 2006-20. And this is recognizing that economic development is not just about money. It's about addressing the social, housing, health, and education needs of communities. It's also a core part of nation building and the reclaiming our place in the economy on our own terms. Right now, our department, as I stated, works closely with our CCOE members. We do meet quarterly. We last met May 22nd in Sudbury. And since COVID-19, we've struggled with consistent participation. Many of the meetings were held, but we didn't achieve quorum, and it really had an impact. So in the absence of formal guidance, we leaned more on funding agreements and technical mandates. This really created a gap between where we wanted to go politically and what we wanted to act on from a technical perspective. So this is why today I'm asking for a recommitment to CCOE for a term to the 2027 Grand Council Assembly. We currently have 2 vacancies, mainly in the Northern Superior and Southwest regions. And to make it official, if there is interest, we ask that a letter of interest be submitted to our chair, Deputy Grand Council Chief Chris Plain, for volunteering or designating a member of council for the CCOE. Miigwech.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. I'll move on to the Chiefs, or the potential for Chiefs Committee on Capitalization. Oh, Joe Muskokin's gone again. Okay. He's here? Oh, sorry. Okay. Potential for Chiefs Committee on Capitalization. You wanted to speak on regards to this, Regional Chief Joe Muskokman and Todd Lewis, Director of Policy. We're going to have to put a timeline on this because we do have online that's coming on at 3:30 and it's 20 after. I know it's 3:18 now.
Is, the idea of First Nation Financial Authority who now provides the cheapest amount of loan money there is to First Nation. The problem is with that is that you have to commit your OFNLP money. You have to commit your own source revenue. You have to commit a lot of things. Commercial banking has a higher rate, but they don't necessarily require the commitments. But you're limited. Each of us is limited to what our balance sheet can stand. And everything that we do is mirrored against our balance sheet. And so that's the limitation factor, because we can't leverage our own assets within our community. We were talking about, in the previous conversation, we're talking about their rules. We have to play within their rules. Well, their rules discount all of our assets within our community. We can't leverage any money based on our asset base. What we need to find is a different way of creating an asset base. And in order to do that, we need to create capitalization. We just heard from the Sovereign Wealth Fund that there's $750 million in the Sovereign Wealth Fund. How much is that is ours? And has anyone here been able to leverage any of that? Because I haven't. It still sits in that Sovereign Wealth Fund account. So if we're going to create our own capital base, we have to create something like a sovereign wealth fund amongst ourselves that we control, that we set the rules for, that we begin the capitalization that recognizes the asset base of every First Nation. And if the business plan can follow that, the borrowing power the lending power of the sovereign pool, which may include bonds, and there are opportunities to create green energy bonds that can be sold on the international market. Who does that? First Nation Finance Authority. Last November, they took $376 million worth of bonds to market, and it never got to the street. It was sold before it got to the street. That's how they capitalize their fund. And from that, we borrow on their fund. We just did it from Chippewa. We borrowed against that fund based on a transmission line. We're going to have things, my point, chiefs, my friends, we're going to have things that are going to develop in our territory, and we don't have an equity stake in them. If we want to take that back, we have to change the way capitalization is being viewed. That means creating our own. And if the governments are serious about reconciliation, where Ontario, they just tripled the loan availability to $10 billion. It's the same at the federal government. I forget how many billions of dollars. Why don't we just ask for it and say, give us that money so that we can capitalize it ourselves? And we'll contract First Nation Finance Authority to create an Anishinabek bond that can be sold on the street. And if you can do that, you're going to create 5 times. Think of it. If we got $2 billion, that would translate into a $10 billion capitalization. That's where we have influence on business. That's what they understand. They understand money. And we need to start to understand money and how to make money. Miigwech.
Miigwech for that. Okay, so we'll move on. I'll pass the mic over to Adam.
Miigwech, thank you very much. We're just juggling the agenda. And the next agenda item was going to be the Ajajak Dudem dealing with governance. Of course, Demen Daguzajik, Anishinabek Moon, Enigan Wedud, and Nak Nagan. But what we will do is, because Dr. Dirk Heyer is standing by, he's been standing by. We're very grateful to have him join virtually, and we know he's very busy, but very important topic that he'll be presenting. So we'd like to go to him first, and then we will come back to the governance topics. So with that, there was a request to go in camera for this session. The main reason of going in camera is we're dealing with some very sensitive issues, potentially triggering discussions. In the room, we have supports. We do have supports that are present in the room if anyone needs that support. Online, we also have a mechanism of providing support for those joining virtually. On the live feed, we can't guarantee that we have those supports. If anybody's watching at home on their own, we want to be sure that we do this properly and we do this fairly. So the best way to do that is turn off the live feed and have the discussion here and have a very good discussion. So with that, there's a request to go in camera. Can I have a mover to go in camera just to turn off the live feed? Okay, Miigwech, seconder to go in camera. Thank you. So we have a mover and seconder. Any opposition to going in camera? None. So what we'll do is we'll just turn off the live feed. And once it's off. Okay. So